Hello, I'm Jeff Sachs. I'm director of the Earth Institute at Columbia University and also professor of sustainable development. I'm absolutely delighted to be together with you this evening. I wish I could be at the conference in person. My travel schedule with a very heavy United Nations load in 2010 prevented it, but I want to wish you all success and observe just for a few minutes why a conference on innovations for sustainable production, especially for Flemish industry, is so vital. What this conference represents, in my view, is the single most important challenge for the world economy, and I think one could say the single most important challenge for global society. I'm a professor of sustainable development. I'm trying to help to balance two absolutely vital goals for the planet. One is development, especially the rise of poor countries to prosperity, but the continued prosperity of our countries, of rich countries like Belgium or the United States and others. Of course, that has to be linked intrinsically, irrevocably with sustainability, with environmental management that allows us to maintain prosperity and not wreck the planet. And the fact of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, the reason why you're at a conference on innovations in sustainable production is that we are not succeeding in sustainable development, not even close right now. There actually is a lot of development underway, even with this current economic crisis. On the economic side, we have the phenomenal rise of Asia, the fact that China, 1.3 billion people, has been doubling the size of its economy every 7 years. India, 1.1 billion people, doubling the size of its economy roughly every 8 to 10 years. Asia as a whole, after centuries of having fallen far behind the West, is surging forward and closing a gap with the United States and Europe. And this, on the whole, is having a tremendous beneficial effect on reducing extreme poverty, on increasing longevity, on helping people around the world to have better lives. Of course, there are places where the development side isn't yet in train. We know that in regions of sub-Saharan Africa and parts of Central Asia, often the most conflict-prone, even achieving the development agenda, the takeoff to sustained and rapid economic growth, has not yet been accomplished. But even in those places, one can see the beginnings of faster economic growth. But what we've not succeeded in doing clearly is harnessing economic growth together with the sane and sustainable environmental management. On every front of the global ecosystems, these stresses are already unsustainable and rapidly becoming worse. Of course, the headline case of this, and probably the biggest potential disaster of all, is human-induced climate change because of the rising concentration of greenhouse gases, principally carbon dioxide from fossil fuel use and from deforestation, but also significant increases of methane, significant increases of nitrous oxide that also reflect our industrial age and the very rapid catching up growth of Asia right now. We see so many other aspects of ecosystem destruction now: water stress, nitrogen loading, phosphorus loading, major eutrophication, destruction of the great deltas of more than 130 major river systems around the world. We see massive destruction of habitat, especially as rainforests now, as our old temperate forests in the historic past, are now being torn down to make more room for more arable land, for more pasture land to feed an ever-growing global population. We are, after all, at 6.8 billion people now, with the net population rising between 75 and million people every year. And according to the best estimates, we're on track for exceeding 9 billion people, barring the kind of disaster that we're absolutely struggling to avoid. So we have a world economy so productive that the damage that it's doing, whether to climate, to increasing water stress, to habitat destruction, to pollutants of various kinds, to invasive species, is already at an unprecedented and unsustainable level, and under current technologies, bound to get worse very, very rapidly when you consider an economy as huge as China's and as successful as China's, achieving 10% per year economic growth, a 7-year doubling time, and that kind of economic dynamism spreading to many other emerging markets around the world. There are two concepts that I hone to. One is the concept of Nobel laureate Paul Crutzen, one of the discoverers of the ozone depletion effect, who says we're in a new geologic epoch. He calls it the Anthropocene, the human-induced era. And he says that unlike all of past Earth's history, when biophysical processes were the basic controlling events of nature, now it's humanity, and now it's social processes, it's the world economy. A second concept very closely related is the concept of planetary boundaries. A leading team of ecologists published an important paper in Nature magazine late last year, which said that we're already exceeding critical planetary boundaries, boundaries that put us at threat of our own future survival. And they pointed most immediately to the nitrogen and phosphorus loadings from the heavy chemical uses, especially in agriculture, as well as climate change. But they noted how many other crucial planetary boundaries, ocean acidification, habitat for biodiversity, water stress, and the like, we are approaching, if not already overstepping. So if we are in the age of the Anthropocene, if we are at the edge or even over the edge of these planetary boundaries vital for survival, what are the prospects? I think we can see three, but only one of them is really a viable prospect. One prospect, of course, is ecological catastrophe. The fact of the matter is we're on course for that right now. There are already regions in the world that are devastated, but within decades, we could very well see major populous regions in different parts of the world devastated by droughts, by floods, by rising sea level, by chemical pollutants, and so forth, that put those regions entirely into an unviable state. We could see global warming so significant that global crop yields are no longer able to sustain the 8 to 9 billion people on the planet. We're close. And that's one absolutely real forecast, and I'm sorry to say that many of the world's leading ecologists take it as the likely forecast. The second, related and even possible partner of this, is economic catastrophe. Of course, one way that one could stop the ecological destruction would be a massive reduction of economic activity, a massive reduction of electricity use or fossil fuel use. But if that were to happen abruptly and on the basis of current technologies, the implications of that for living standards, for shocks, even for potential conflict around the world, in my view, would be tremendous. Some people say, yes, let's just cut sharply our living standards. Not so easy. We don't see elections being won on that. That's not what people are desiring. And if that were the forced event, the consequences geopolitically, I think, could be extraordinarily severe. That leaves us, in my opinion, with a third direction, and that is very significant, globally scaled technological change. That's why your conference is so important. Unless we find better ways to mobilize energy, better ways to use energy, better ways to farm, better ways to close the industrial cycle so that toxics and other pollutants are not dumped into the air and the waterways or destroying the biodiversity, we can't make it with a growing global economy as we're hoping for. So we need new technologies that can reconcile our global growth but decouple it with rising carbon emissions, with the rising landscape degradation, with rising pollutants in the waterways and in the air. Now, since the Earth Institute that I'm so proud to direct has many absolutely wonderful technologists and engineers, and through them I get to meet you and engineers in major companies around the world, I have a good deal of confidence that the range of options for the 21st century, with our advances in energy systems, advances in nanotechnology, advances in information and communications technology, ability to make a smart grid, ability to make major changes in the fundamental technologies of energy production, of energy utilization, of agricultural production, of industrial ecology and industrial cycling, give us tremendous opportunities. Of course, I don't have to recite these in detail to you of all communities with the expertise that you have in engineering and in energy systems, in nanotechnology, with the illustrious people that I know are at the conference that Vito and Terry have mobilized. You know this range of possibilities. But let me say how complicated it is for us to mobilize these in real time. I was just testifying in the US Congress earlier this week, and when one thinks about putting together the pieces of the puzzle of energy security, healthy economy, technological dynamism, and a low carbon economy, it isn't easy. It's not easy in the United States. It's not easy in Flanders. It's not easy in Europe. To do this on a global scale, on a cooperative scale, is the hardest challenge the world has ever faced together. What needs to be done? Clearly, in every category that I've mentioned, new energy systems, we need for the pre-commercial technologies in large-scale solar, for example, in energy storage from renewables, in carbon capture and sequestration, in safe, perhaps modular nuclear power plants, if they can be made safe from proliferation. We need public-private partnerships to move forward technologies that are pre-commercial now, where there's likely to be a very steep learning curve, but tremendous scalable potential at the global level. As an automobile center of the world, I'm sure that Flanders is absolutely engaged in what I believe is the great transformation from 100 years of internal combustion engine to electric vehicles, whether plug-ins, battery operated, whether fuel cell in the future. But I do believe that the option of moving to electric propulsion systems and smart cars linked together by information and communication technology, car to grid, grid to car, all of that gives us a new vision of personal sustainable mobility, especially in densely populous areas like Flanders, like the urban world that now predominates the world's population. But think of how hard it will be to move from 100 years of internal combustion engine to large-scale application of electric vehicles when key technologies like long-lasting high-performance batteries needed, or the fuel cells, hydrogen onboard storage or whatever technology, is pre-commercial. And to move this not just to concept vehicles and demonstration cars, but to the bulk of our fleet is a profound challenge. Again, a public-private partnership that involves the car, that involves the battery, obviously, that involves the grid, that involves public acceptance, that involves public infrastructure. It's a huge public-private challenge. In agriculture, it's the same. Our loading of nitrogen and phosphorus in the world to try to feed 6.8 billion people is choking our estuaries around the world. We need microdosing. We need new, far more efficient use of water resources, especially in a climate change-dominated world. I'm working in many parts of the world with colleagues where water tables are collapsing, such as in the Indo-Gangetic Plain or the North China Plain. And it's happening in the United States, it's happening in Australia. The Mediterranean is likely to dry significantly under the forcings of human-induced climate change. All of this is to say the scale of the challenge of sustainable development is unlike anything we've seen in the world. We will need the best of company leadership, the best of the sciences, chemistry, physics, nanotechnology. We will need organizations like Vito and Terry, and I'm proud to say the Earth Institute, which try to mobilize across so many disciplines the various 360-degree perspectives that are needed to put these pieces together, not just to talk about what's on the blueprint, but actually to help society to make a scale of transformation deeper, more rapid, more global than has ever been accomplished before. Within this mix of the genius that you represent, I do believe there's a small role for economists such as myself. I see that what we need is to harness incentives, to harness public policy, to harness public financing, so that what the collective will of our countries and the world mobilizes can help to align the powerful forces of markets and of industry and of the phenomenal technologies that you as industry leaders have developed and that you have in prototype, pre-commercial stage, ready to take to the world. All of this, in conclusion, is to say how proud I am to have a few minutes together with you at the Innovations for Sustainable Production Conference. Flanders, for hundreds of years, has been a center of technological leadership, of industry, of advanced high technology services. I always enjoy visiting and seeing the next steps ahead. You will be leaders in this challenge of sustainable development. Thank you for taking up the cause, and I very much look forward to seeing you and working with you in the years ahead. Thank you for having me at this important conference.